Boy, what a weird one, huh? For the Pens on the road in Raleigh. They still haven't won in Raleigh this decade, but they squeeze out, they steal, absolutely steal 1 point in the standings. Could have easily been two, but we'll get to that later as the Penguins don't quite keep pace with the Columbus Blue Jackets in the Eastern Conference playoff race, but they do get something tangible out of a game that looked like it had gotten away in a large way in the third period. This is Penn's Rapid Reaction. I'm Matt Geica, and welcome back into my lair as I just couldn't resist going live after this one. I was debating because, well, this road trip coming up, we're going to have a lot of late games, so probably not going to be up for the end of some of these, just to be honest with you. I've got an early wake-up call during weekdays at least. So, but then I thought, you know what? Here's my one chance to get a post-game show in at a reasonable hour, or somewhat reasonable hour for many of you. As just checking the scores, the Islanders win in overtime. Of course they do. The Blue Jackets beat the Lightning. So the Penguins, like I said, don't quite keep pace, but they don't lose 2 points in this race in the both Metro Division and the Eastern Conference playoff chase overall. So turns out to be critical. The Penguins scored 2 goals in the final 2.5 minutes to, well, basically stun a Carolina crowd at the Lenovo Center that was thinking that it had helped its team take a couple of points away from the Penguins because of, you could tell, the influence that they had over the officials at times in this game. Also, Rod Brindamore just absolutely giving it to the referees during the early stretch of the game when the Penguins had 4 straight power plays. Not to belabor that point, I hate to complain about officiating, but in this case, I feel it is warranted. I feel that the proven theory that home ice or home advantage in sports is mostly about the referees agreeing with the home crowd. They are influenced. They are human, right? After all, I'm an official myself at a much lower level than professional sports, but I do understand the pressures that go along with officiating a game, and I can't even understand what it's like to have 18,000 people shouting at you. So I understand, but it's not excusable at the same time when you do have a game turn like that in terms of the penalty calls. And I give credit to the Canes. They came out better in the third period than they did certainly in the second and even in the first when they had a 1-0 lead for a good chunk of that opening stanza. The Penguins tie it late in the first. They go ahead in the second period on a power play, and then the Canes enjoyed a couple of 5-on-3 advantages in the third. They scored on one of them. But I'll be honest, I'll be forthright with you. They also controlled 5-on-5 play, did the Canes, early in the third period and really throughout the final frame whenever it was 5-on-5, which really wasn't much game time after the Canes took a 3-2 lead. Mark Jankowski, the ex-Penguin, buried his own rebound, and it looked like the game had gotten away from the Pens, especially when the Canes added a 5-on-3 goal from Alexander Nikishin. But guess what? A nice bounce in front. The Penguins, I think, had that one coming, just considering, like I said, how the officials' calls had gone against them, and I think unjustly so in a couple of those cases. So the Pens get a bounce in front on a centering pass that gets them within one, gives them a fighting chance. As with Stuart Skinner off the ice for an extra attacker after Achari got credit for that goal in front with 2 minutes and 8 seconds left, and Brian Russ scores on a rebound of an Erik Karlsson point shot that I think Ricard Raquel deflected. He got the primary assist on that. Rust gets his 23rd. The Penguins get a point out of a game that appeared to be lost. Huge props to Stu Skinner. He was put under pressure, as the Canes usually do, to opposing goaltenders. I thought the Pens did a pretty good job bottling up the Canes for a large portion of that game. And yes, the extended power play sequences help in the shots on goal category, but it's hard to actually get shots on goal these days with the NHL cracking down on formerly errant shots that used to be credited as shots on goal. Now, due to gambling props primarily, they're much more stringent on handing those out, but the Canes still got to 39 through regulation. And so it's just they're overwhelming at times, and you're not going to be able to keep them down for a whole game. What you hope is that you limit the grade A chances, and the Penguins didn't really do that, especially early in that third period. So in some ways, fortunate to get a point out of this game. In other ways, unfortunate, because in the shootout, after, by the way, the Penguins miss on an overtime power play that didn't really have much luster to it. A couple of deflection chances in front for Raquel, but the Pens wasted much of their overtime power play just trying to get set up in the zone, which during a 4-on-3 shouldn't be that big of an issue. It's not a two-man advantage or anything, but that's the second straight overtime game, or pardon me, the second overtime game in their last three. The last three have all gone to overtime, in which the Penguins looked not so great on a power play in the sudden death session. And look, they don't have Crosby, they don't have Malkin at their disposal. Game 3 without Malkin, 2 more games to go on his suspension for slashing Rasmus Dahlin last Friday. Sidney Crosby, who knows, could be back on Thursday in Vegas, maybe in Dallas the following game. I guess we'll find out. He skated in the morning skate today, this Tuesday morning in Raleigh, so he's on the comeback for sure. But the Penguins are definitely struggling without their captain at times, and I think you saw that in overtime. Not necessarily in the shootout. Ben Kindle scored first in the shootout, got a chance from Dan Muse, and the 18-year-old slid it through the pads of Frederik Andersen. Looked like things were coming up the Pens' way when Stu Skinner made a save on Seth Jarvis to start the shootout from the Carolina perspective. But then Yegor Chinikov missed a wide-open net after a beautiful move to the backhand. Frederik Andersen, I'm not the biggest fan of his. I don't think he's that good, but with the way the Canes control play usually, he doesn't have to be. Where you see him exposed at times is overtime and shootout, and the Penguins could not expose him enough, apparently, as Chinikov missed. And then Andrei Svechnikov scored to tie the game, or tie the shootout, excuse me. And Jackson Blake ends up netting the winner as Anthony Mantha is stopped. Penguins actually shot second in that. I think I got my order confused there early on. But Skinner allows goals on 2 of 3 shots, so it's not just Artur Shilov's, as Stu Skinner absorbs the shutout loss. And the Penguins shooters continue to struggle, just 1 for 3 tonight, and they're well below 30% for the season. I think right around 25%, which not very good for shootout attempts, especially considering there's no defensive back pressure. Typically, breakaways in the NHL, you're thinking maybe 30, 35%, same rate for penalty shots. So if you're below 30%, you're really struggling. But the Penguins have struggled on both ends in the shootout. So they squander another point in that sense. They're 1-10 in the shootout. If they were, say, 5-6 in the shootout, of course, they'd be in much better position. They wouldn't be that far behind the Hurricanes, in fact, in the Metro Division standings. But that's where we sit right now, is the Penguins dropping another point behind Carolina. That's the 41st win of the season for Carolina. The Penguins have just 32. So the Canes have gotten their position comfortably atop the division, honestly. This is a good team. Again, they're 24-8-2 at home now, the Canes. But the Penguins just can't kick that Raleigh curse, even after they got a 1-0 lead in a shootout. Like I said, Ben Kindle. At least Dan Muse went with something different there, but still that doesn't work. It doesn't pan out in the end, I suppose. Doesn't turn into the second point. So weird game to analyze. The Penguins controlled the second. I think the Canes were in control in the first. Overall, if you look at shot attempts, the Canes had a pretty decent advantage over the Penguins tonight. You go to some of the advanced stats, and expected goals were in the Canes' favor for sure. So the fact the Penguins got this to overtime, especially after falling apart early in the third, felt like a win. And we might just have to take that, might just have to grab that point and move on emotionally. I know the Penguins are going to have to, us as fans and as observers, we'll have to do our best. And just how dramatic that comeback was, I think it's easier on a night like tonight compared to, say, Saturday against Philly, when they had 3 separate leads against the Flyers, ended up losing that game in a shootout and getting that loser point. How many extra points do the Penguins have this season? It's become an incredible number so far this year. 15 losses in overtime and the shootout. That's 10 of those, in shootouts. They're 3-5, I believe, in overtime after Tommy Novak's winning goal against Boston the other night. But I guess much like this game, the season can be tough to evaluate because obviously many of us had the Penguins as finishing out of the playoffs. Some of us even thought maybe a bottom 5 chance, especially if maybe some veterans were traded after the Penguins got off to an expectedly slow start. Instead, they started hot. They were 8-2-2 at one point. And now the Pens still in playoff position. I was going to say comfortably, but not that comfortably, because the Blue Jackets are in hot pursuit. And we're seeing right now that things are tightening as we get down the stretch. The Penguins with 79 points. They are currently tied with the Islanders, who, like I mentioned, won in overtime. at 79. Both teams 9 points behind Carolina. Columbus, though, with a convincing win against the Lightning tonight, just 3 points behind, trying to push both the Penguins and the Islanders. I suppose if there is one saving grace, it's that the Islanders are there too, and they could just as easily drop out. One of those teams, though, likely not going to make the playoffs. You still have the Bruins, though, 78 points. I suppose they feasibly could fall out, and you could see the Jackets and the Islanders and the Penguins all make it. So that's still a possibility, as we have 18, 17, somewhere in that range, games to play in the regular season. So many games jammed together. So things can change. Probabilities can change. It's a whiplash kind of effect in this month of March. And we're only a third of the way in, not even a third of the way in, 10 days into March. And so much has happened since the NHL came back from the Olympic break. The Penguins get a couple of quick wins coming out of it. Then they drop 3 in a row, including the shootout loss to Philly. They come from behind from 3 down to beat the Bruins in overtime. They get a point here tonight. I'm going to call this one a net positive, considering their struggles over the years in the Lenovo Center / what do you call it, PNC Arena, whatever they're calling it these days. It has been a proverbial house of horrors for the Pens. Doesn't have to be anywhere near Halloween. And I suppose in some ways the the Canes got the last laugh, but I think also the Penguins did push the Hurricanes, and you saw how temperamental Carolina got in the second period. I think they were a little worried. I think they were concerned about being pushed, and I think the Penguins had their full attention, especially after the Penguins blew them out back in, what was that, late December, last game of the calendar year, and in Pittsburgh. And still with 2 games left, maybe some message sending as well. 2 games left, between these 2 teams in the season series. 1 in Carolina, 1 back home in Pittsburgh. And those 2 games are coming up in the next 2 weeks, next 12 days, actually, in fact. So we're going to see a lot more of these 2 teams going head-to-head, and maybe even a playoff matchup. And hard to believe they've been in the division for, what, now this will be the 13th season these 2 teams have been in the same division in the Metro. And the Penguins and Canes have not met in the playoffs over that stretch. In fact, you have to go back to, 2009, the last time these 2 teams faced off in the postseason. So could happen. Probably not in the first round, although I shouldn't speak too soon. Like I said, there's a lot of permutations, a lot of things that could still happen here with regard to the Blue Jackets getting closer and closing in. Looks like the Capitals are probably out of it. They're 8 points behind the Islanders and the Penguins. They're 7 points behind the Bruins for the final playoff spot in the East as of right now. So all these implications, it almost feels worthless to try to break them all down, because, like I said, teams are playing 2 out of 3 with great regularity at this point, and they're making it difficult to nail anything down. But the Eastern Conference playoff race at one point involved basically everybody. We at least have seen some stratification, and the Penguins have shown themselves to be one of the playoff caliber teams in the East, but the question is, do they get to the playoffs? You don't always have to follow through on that. If you are good enough, sometimes you don't make it. Sometimes you flag at the end, and without Sidney Crosby, without Evgeny Malkin, who's had a resurgent season, they're in a difficult spot. They'll head out west now. They've got Vegas, 10 o'clock face-off Eastern time on Thursday. They've got Utah looking like they're going to make the playoffs for the first time in a while, whether they be the Mammoth or the Coyotes or the Utah Hockey Club. That's a 9 o'clock face-off on Saturday. Monday, 9:30 at Colorado. Big showdown there. Malkin will be eligible to return. And then a return trip to Raleigh to play Carolina next Wednesday. So a 5-game trip, all against legit contending teams. Maybe Vegas, the weakest of those. Weakest of those teams. The Penguins just wiped out the Golden Knights at home less than 2 weeks ago. You'll recall 5-0. But since then, the Penguins are, 1, 2, and 2. So they've dropped some points since that impressive performance against the Golden Knights. Let me know your feedback on this game. How do you make heads or tails of this one? It's just one of those games where you could easily talk yourself into they should have won it. You could easily talk yourself into they should have lost it. I was on both sides of it. I was ready to pack it up, close the laptop, head off to bed. But when you watch a team score 2 extra attacker goals in the final 2 minutes and change, then it tends to get your attention a little bit. And I know the Penguins did get the Canes' attention tonight, even though, well, there might be some luck involved when you score two that late, when you get some pucks bouncing your way. But the Penguins do manage to squeeze a point out of it. What did you think of Elmer Soderblom? I thought that the newest Penguin, the acquisition from the Red Wings at the deadline, I felt like he's disruptive with that telephone pole of a stick he carries around. At 6'8", you'd hope he'd be disruptive, but you've seen a lot of guys that size. You just get that big and you're clumsy. Even Zdeno Chara, at his best, was not the greatest skater, not the most agile guy in the world. For his size, he certainly was, especially at his peak. But there are some limitations that come with that size. But I think he can be a productive player. Love what I saw from Yegor Chinakhov. Again, he continues to show me something on forechecks just with his raw speed, raw ability. I think that's a common thread between both Chinakhov and Soderblom and some of the guys that Kyle Dubas has acquired. Anthony Mantha. Again, you look at size there. You look at strength with Justin Brazeau. Goes for some of those raw tools. And I think Connor Dewar, a speedy guy for sure. Blake Lizotte, speed for days. So some of the acquisitions that have come aboard under Kyle Dubas, you can tell he looks for that one elite trait, I think. And some of these guys are drafted highly. Some of them are discarded by their former teams because they don't deliver on some of that promise. But they can still be productive and useful NHL players. And I'm not saying I think Elmer Soderblom could be a top 6 guy. I think that's the dream scenario. But when you've got Chinakhov blossoming like he has in Pittsburgh, when you've got players that you picked up off the scrap heap, like a Parker Wotherspoon, who I don't know if he has an elite trait necessarily, but he's good enough in all areas that he can hold things down. He can play with an Erik Karlsson, maybe even a Chris Letang. But Letang goes in the minus category tonight. If I had to transition over to guys that I'm worried about, Chris Letang is certainly one of them, as he continues to be, as I put it on X tonight, a conveyor belt of errors. Just with the puck on his stick, things are not developing in the Penguins' favor. Whether he throws it away, whether he blatantly turns it over, whether he makes a bad decision with it, makes a bad decision to pinch as well. We saw that in the Philly game over the weekend. Nearly cost the Penguins a goal. So I don't know who you play him with. I agreed with the trade of Brett Kulak to Colorado, but Kulak is the only partner that's been able to get any kind of decent play out of Letang. I did like what I saw from Ilya Soloveyev and Sam Girard together, but of course Girard gets an upper body injury. I believe he's day-to-day. Justin Brazeau, I think, was downgraded to week, so tough to see him out of the lineup. But you do get an extended look at Soderblom, at least, because of that. So there's one upside there. But you saw Connor Clifton make a bad pinch on one of the Canes' goals tonight. I think it was the third goal scored by Jarvis. The one that put them ahead. I believe earlier I said it was Jankowski who put them ahead. It was Jankowski who tied it, and then Jarvis who quickly gave the Canes the lead. So there were some glaring errors for the Penguins on the back line tonight, and that's still a concern. This was the weakness we thought for the team. We thought they were pretty decently deep up front, and I think their forward depth has actually surprised us with additions like Chinakhov, of course, supplementing that, and that's how they're able to survive and still score some goals with Crosby and Malkin out of the lineup. But defense still looks a little light, and you're hoping that maybe a Solovyov or perhaps even a Sam Girard can step up and give you something better here down the stretch, something better than what you've gotten when injuries do creep in. I heard that Ryan Graves was available for tonight, but I don't think I want to see him back in the lineup. I've seen enough of Ryan Graves over the last couple of years. I'm okay with trying something new, even if it does perhaps take on a little extra risk with, say, a guy like Soloveyev, who's certainly not that experienced at the NHL level compared to a Graves. But I don't care about experience when you can't play, as it appears is the case with Graves these days in the NHL, at least. Then it doesn't really make much of a difference on the positive side. So this is Penn's Rapid Reaction, just a stream of consciousness tonight. I wasn't really planning on going on the air, but this was a impromptu decision to go live with it. So thanks for joining me, and I got to the 20-minute mark. It's going to be a heck of a trip for the Penguins. It's going to be enjoyable to see how they can rise to the challenge. I guess bottom line for me is this team continues to impress me with its pluck, its ability to get itself off the canvas when it looks like it's dead to the world, and still somehow, even if they don't get a result out of it, which they did tonight, but even if they don't, they make it interesting. They don't lay down for a long stretch of play. They don't have complete duds of games very often at all. I was commenting on this a couple of weeks ago. Maybe 3 or 4 games where they never really had a chance. Whereas the last couple of years of the Mike Sullivan era, there were a lot of those games where you could turn it off after the first 20 minutes or so. You can't even turn it off after the first 58 minutes, apparently, with the Penguins, with the way things are going. So kudos to them. Kudos to Dan Muse. He has this team believing. There was all this talk in training camp about a competitive camp and making sure that there was more of a competitive spirit within the group this year. And whatever Muse did in camp, whatever they've been doing during the year, the in-house leadership, it's worked because this team still believes, and they think, in Kyle Dubas's words, they can write their own story, and they can surprise people, and they certainly have through now more than 3/4 of the NHL regular season. Canes 5, Penguins 4 in a shootout. The Penguins get the point for the regulation tie, and they head on to Vegas on Thursday. Maybe I'll talk to you later in the road trip. Like I said, I'm not sure how many folks are up that late after some of these games, but maybe the Utah game on Saturday. That's a 9 o'clock start. Reasonable that many of you will still be awake for that one. But hey, the Pens have gotten folks' attention, so I think we might see a few more people joining the Night Owl Club. Shout out to Mike Lang this week, just because of how interesting they're making it and how much fun this team is to watch. You really can't turn the TV off. Not that I ever do. Because I'm a true hockey fan. But there were times I've been tempted over the past couple of years, but not this year, not this season, not tonight for the Pens as they rally back. So talk to you later on this road trip. Keep an eye on my social accounts. I'll usually be posting something when I do intend to give you a Pens rapid reaction. Talk to you soon.